Hello, everybody. I'm Sean Reynolds from Sportsnet, about to be joined by Ken Weeb from Sportsnet. Together, we are Kenny and Renny, and this is the Kenny and Renny post-game show after what we could probably describe as another Thanksgiving massacre for the Winnipeg Jets. Just to give a little bit of context, last year, the day after Thanksgiving, the Winnipeg Jets came rolling into this building right here, the XL Energy Center, to play the Minnesota Wild, and the Wild put up a touchdown on them in a 7-1 victory, while the Jets did a little bit better this year. An unconverted touchdown is all it was. But boy, oh boy, last season, maybe you could see it coming. It was right around this time last year that the Jets season that had the hottest start they'd ever had in franchise history started to unravel. Let's hope that's not what's happening right now for the Winnipeg Jets, but that's what was happening at that point last season. They had, the day before Thanksgiving, had lost a game to the Columbus Blue Jackets. I know that because I was in Columbus covering that game and went to get my COVID test results, which you needed to fly at that time to get back across the border. And because it was Thanksgiving and everyone was so busy, I never got my test results back in time. So I was stuck in Columbus for American Thanksgiving and had a very romantic dinner with John Bartlett, who was also calling that game, who is also calling the game here tonight. So it's not quite a year ago all that happened. Last year was the day after Thanksgiving, this the day before, but I think the moniker, the Thanksgiving massacre, probably applies in both cases. This one may be a little bit more surprising. As I was saying, last season, the Minnesota Wild had already established at this point early on they were a really, really great team. This year, they've been a team that struggles. Interesting coming into this game, their head coach, Dean Evison, had said he had not felt that feeling that the Minnesota Wild had last year in their locker room until the last game they played, which is a come-from-behind victory against the Carolina Hurricanes. Yeah, the last time they played was the game before they played the Winnipeg Jets, the night the Jets played the Pittsburgh Penguins. And then, of course, the Carolina Hurricanes would move on to Winnipeg, where they would lose in overtime to the Jets. Dean Evison said at that day, this building, the team, it started to feel like what it felt like last year. I never got to ask them the question, but I'm assuming this after tonight feels very much what they felt like last year. This was a game in which I thought that the Minnesota Wild absolutely, pushed their will on the Winnipeg Jets. Was it the Jets' best game? By no means it wasn't. And the one thing that I think makes that clear and obvious is halfway through the second period when the Jets decided to turn it on, they were absolutely dominant. And we'll get into reasons why that happened and why that worked. But no doubt, the Jets were absolutely dominant at that point in the game. And that is one thing that maybe I walk away with a little concern. As I'd said, last year around this time, the Jets had started to unravel. I think it was about 5 straight losses. I think the fourth loss was the game against the Columbus Blue Jackets. The fifth loss was the 7-1 loss to the Minnesota Wild. And then I think they went on to Calgary and pulled out a victory there as one of those Connor Hellebuck steals the show kind of games, if I remember correctly. Don't want to say the Jets are unraveling at the seams. I will say this, nothing to really be happy about in this game. The last game, yes, they pull out a victory, and it's that old, the Jets know how to win in crazy tight games or however it goes. But it's a game in which there were some pretty big warts in them giving up those 3 goals in that game going into overtime when they're up 3-0 with 5 minutes left. Then you go to the game before that, and the Jets' kind of inability to get scoring, like we saw here tonight. And they lose a game to the Pittsburgh Penguins. And if I'm not mistaken, the game before that is the game against the Seattle Kraken that they pull entirely out of the fire. But a game that they win 3-2 in overtime, again, where they had trouble scoring and were able to pull the goaltender after a great drawn penalty by Pierre-Luc Dubois. But I think you could say this, the Calgary Flames game, they lost as well and weren't able to score. I'm counting 4 of their last 5 games in which the Jets really can't get going offensively here. And that's got to be a concern. Have they, fared well in those games? Well, they lost against Calgary, they lost against Pittsburgh, and they lost against the Minnesota Wild here tonight, losing 3 of those 5 games. Could have very well been a loss against the Seattle Kraken. I think it's time to start saying, I'm not saying sound the alarm bells, but I think it's time to start taking a look at the Winnipeg Jets and the way they've been playing lately, and trying to decide whether or not there are issues they need to move on from, or if the kind of game that they're playing at this point is sustainable. Best guy to talk to about that, of course, is my main man, Kenny Wiebe, who is in a very different part of the XL Energy Center here. I'm trying to point him out. I don't see him anywhere, but I do see him on the screen. So time to bring in Kenny, man with the best music in the business. Here he comes. Ken, my friend, looking good as usual. I've got myself a Vittorio Rossi number here. Frank and the boys put this bad boy together. I got to say this. I got compliments on the tie here earlier on tonight. Walking down the street, people just casually, say, hey, nice tie. And I'm like talking to strangers on the street and being like, my friend Frank at Vittorio Rossi? Well, he's the guy who could hook you up like that, because he is the guy who could hook you up like that. Although I don't know if that helps the people here in Minnesota, but it does help the people back home at Winnipeg. If you want to look like Kenny and Renny, head on down to Vittorio Rossi at Corden Avenue. Tell them Kenny and Renny sent you, and ask for Frank or one of the boys, and they can turn. I don't know what they can turn something into gold. I don't know what it is. Water into wine, whatever they can do. It's like a religious experience, but good stuff there. Ken, great to see you. Give me an idea what you saw out there tonight.
Yeah, capital G or UGLY ugly right there for the Winnipeg Jets.
That was a tough word.
It was a tough word for the Jets. Also, tough word to hear as well. Certainly very interesting. I mean, I love the honesty in the post game. Nate Schmidt saying, 10 minutes out of 60 is not going to get it done. We'll dig into what Rick Bowness said afterward. But for right now, boy oh boy, it's funny. Isn't it so interesting, Sean? When we went into the last game, we wondered how it would look, because the Carolina Hurricanes were a team that made the Jets look slow a lot last year in the two meetings, whereas tonight the Wild were the ones who made the Jets look slow, and the Jets actually were quite fast against the Carolina Hurricanes for the majority of the game.
No doubt.
On Monday. So they had a little bit of a hiccup here today, is what I would call it. It was interesting. I was talking with Jamal Mayers. The Jets just were not able to get anything going through the neutral zone. Their passing was very poor, just kind of a little bit off or a little bit forward. So to me, I mean, that was an issue that we saw quite a bit. I mean, the puck management, poor, very undisciplined, a bunch of offensive zone minors, and just kind of avoidable penalties, let's just say, in a big word. I mean, it just was an ugly game on a lot of fronts. I mean, having said that, so interesting, Sean, at 3-1, when Kyle Connor scored late and the Jets had a bunch of chances in the second, even Nate Schmidt said it, the Jets felt like there was an opportunity to win the game, but then they give up a power play goal in the opening minute of the third, and then they just had nothing to give. And actually, I applaud Rick Bowness for rolling out the third and fourth lines and having the top six take a seat for the majority of that last, 7-8 minutes or whatever it was. There were not, Sean, let's put it this way. There have not been many nights where the Jets had a lot of passengers. Tonight was one of those nights. They had far too many passengers, and it came back to haunt them. I mean, the Wild got a couple bounces, but the Jets had no business winning this game, and it was their most lopsided loss of the season. Is that a reason for folks to panic? I wouldn't say so, but the other part of that is, as you started going through the laundry list, Sean, if the Jets don't rebound in Dallas, now all of a sudden you're looking at, losses in 3 out of 4, and some nights where they haven't been as sharp as what we're used to seeing. So the sustainability piece, that's an important one. I do think the Jets have a playoff team in terms of what their roster and what have they done, or what they have been able to do so far through 18 games. But it doesn't just happen on its own. And tonight was one of those days where Rick Bowness felt, Sean, that it was important to remind his team that with great results comes great responsibility. And the great responsibility means you can't take nights off like the one the Jets took on Wednesday night at Xcel Energy Center. They were not ready, and they got waxed, quite frankly.
Yeah, you know what? I thought that was really interesting when Rick Bowness said that after the game. Because to me, while it's a story that I'll talk about it a little bit here, and then maybe we can get into it on a broadcast another time. But I had a conversation with Mark Scheifele about what Rick Bowness said to him. So it was very interesting. We talked about this on the last show about what Rick Bowness said to Josh Morrissey to kind of get him, in the mind space that he's been and really kind of turned him around. And it all started with his first phone call. He called him up and said all these things to him in his first phone call. We talked about it on the show here tonight. And that first phone call had an effect. Well, he had a similar phone call with Mark Scheifele where he talked to him. And this was what he said. And so it's interesting that this came up here. This was going to be one of our stories. We never got to it. Quite frankly, we didn't get to it because Mark Scheifele didn't have the kind of games that we can get to be telling stories about Mark Scheifele. But Scheifele talked to me and said that when very kind of first phone call that he had with Rick Bowness said to him, listen, by the way you've played, by the way you've performed, by the results you've got in your time in the league, you have created an expectation of yourself in this league. And with that expectation comes responsibility to continue meeting that expectation. And that was kind of the thing that he got to click. Ken, if you're not going to with comments, can you get that one off the board there? I thought that was the kind of the idea that clicked in Mark Scheifele's head, that it was like, wait a minute, that's right. Like last year, Mark Scheifele really wasn't Mark Scheifele, but Mark Scheifele had created an expectation of Mark Scheifele. And if you don't meet those expectations, things can go pretty sour for you. I mean, there's a lot of different players in the league who, if they would have had the year that Mark Scheifele had last year, people would have been ecstatic with them. If a kid that came out of the blue in Seattle last season and had a season like Mark Scheifele had, people would be ecstatic. But no, last year, even though he's a point per game player, was considered a down year for Mark Scheifele because we know what Mark Scheifele looks like when he's at his best, and we know that wasn't him last year. So I love that idea because these are one of the tenets that Rick Bowness operates under and he said that about the team. He said, we've fought our way into a position where we were fighting for first place in the Central Division. You have to take a look at that and say, we've now created an expectation for ourselves. And I love the line that he used. He says he's not a big believer in lessons, right? Like, oh, let's take this night as a lesson and move on, right? He said, I'm not a big believer in lessons. And what I took from that, Ken, tell me if I'm wrong or if I'm way out to lunch, but what I took from that was him saying, that's not a lesson that this team needs. No one needs to be taught that lesson. They know this. This isn't something they didn't know. What he did say was there are harsh reminders. And tonight is a harsh reminder that if you don't bring your game, you're not going to be able to say to people we're one of the best teams in the league right now, because that didn't look like one of the best teams in the league. And that's not a team that's going to hang around in the conversation for first place in the league if they do that. So the gauntlet has been dropped by Rick Bowness. He said to this team, you created an expectation. Your start created an expectation, and now you need to live up to that expectation. Tonight, the Jets did not come anywhere close to living up to that expectation.
Yeah, bang on. And, I love the way that Rick, it's interesting. The harsh reminder is actually kind of the lesson, don't you think? I don't know. For me, honestly, don't you think? It kind of, to me anyway, that was my interpretation. I love the fact of how Rick delivered that message. It's easy to just say, oh, well, you got to learn from that loss. Nate Schmidt said it himself. You got to learn from that because you don't want to be getting your behind kicked with any level of regularity. You want to be a consistent hockey team. Every team gets waxed at least once or twice a year, but you can't afford to have that happen to you with any degree of regularity. It's kind of weird that it happened almost a year to the day of the last time the Jets lost 7-1, as you mentioned. But overall, I mean, to me, this is a one-off, but it also is a reminder that you cannot play that way, or else you can get kicked. I mean, there were a couple bad bounces, but the Jets did not play well enough. They were not sharp enough. They were not disciplined enough. They were not fast enough. They did not generate enough offense. They did not generate enough sustained pressure. They did not do a good enough job backtracking in the neutral zone. They didn't defend well enough, and they didn't really get to the net or clean up the front of the net all that well. I mean, it's interesting. I mean, let's talk about this. I mean, Sean, the Jets were supposed to have learned a lesson from allowing the Carolina Hurricanes to get to the net to provide traffic for all 3 extra attacker goals they allowed. Then today there were a couple opportunities where, yes, one of them is definitely a bad bounce that goes up into the air off of the shoulder of Connor Hellebuck. But then it was Boldy, right? Boldy gets inside position. The puck doesn't go in off Boldy, but if Boldy's not standing there, that puck might not have gone in the net, right? Hellebuck might have been able to get there, or Adam Lowry might have been able to get over there. So they didn't do a good enough job on their box outs. They didn't do enough job. They didn't skate nearly well enough, and they just weren't good. I mean, that's. I mean, Andy Johnson, the Jets miss a skilled player like Ehlers. Yeah, absolutely, the Jets miss a skilled player like Ehlers. Well, guess what? The Minnesota Wild miss Ryan Hartman. Ryan Hartman had a great year for the Minnesota Wild last year. All teams are missing players already at this time of year. It's tough for them. The Jets are missing players, no doubt about that. Sean, you had it first. Nikolai Ehlers had his surgery in Detroit today. The timetable is 6 to 8 weeks in terms of maybe 10 weeks. I mean, somewhere in there. I mean, Rick Bowness said roughly 8 weeks. We'll see how long it takes. Morgan Barron, quickly for folks who were unaware, did skate again today. He was shooting pucks, so he's coming along. Mason Appleton's still going to be a while, obviously, with that wrist injury, but the Jets have ample players at their disposal to get the job done. They just played against a Wild team that in 7 of their first 18 games, Sean, they scored 2 or fewer. Shutout twice, 3 games with 1, 2 games of 2, and then they explode for 6 tonight. I mean, it was an interesting game. I mean, Cole Perfetti probably had the best scoring chance of the entire game. Blake Wheeler made a dynamite pass over to him. Perfetti thought he had a wide open net. He took a pretty hard shot. But Philip Gustafson got I think it was the paddle. He shot across the crease, made an incredible save, but the Jets didn't generate nearly enough offense. So, and they didn't get enough offense because they didn't play with speed. They didn't play with pace. They looked slow, and they didn't really get much going. And it's both a blessing and a curse. Rick Bowness said his 4th line was his best line, and while you need your 4th line and your 3rd line to be good, if the 4th line is the best line, Sean, with all due respect to all 4th lines across the NHL, when the 4th line is the best line, it's very rare that a team wins a hockey game unless their goalie stands on their head. And again, I don't think that Connor Hellebuck was an issue at all in this game. He gave up 6, and he was not the issue. There was really never a sense of that he was. I mean, if you pulled him, it was a mercy pull. But anyways, the Jets were poor. I mean, this to me again. It's more of a one-off, but they also need to be sharper. I mean, we said on this trip, they got 3 divisional games. You knew the Wild would be ready for them. They had a 5-day break after playing Carolina, and they were sharp and they were ready, and they played with a level of desperation that the Jets did not meet. And that's what happens when you're, 4th in the NHL going into the game in points percentage. Teams are going to get up to play you, especially when they're a team that is a division rival that has had plenty of spice in the series over the last couple of years.
I'm going to do something a little bit out of order than we usually do. I'm going to hand out the home field dig deeper comment because I can't imagine a comment coming in better than this. Julie Sue says, my lamplighter is my cat who threw up a hairball and saved me from watching the last 10 minutes of the game. I think that one was probably hard to stomach for a lot of people. Julie Sue, who we know is a hardcore Jets fan, and usually I think likes to fight for her team. I think sometimes the comments that are made on this show here, she'll take I don't want to say takes offense to, but she's willing to fight for her team. She's definitely willing to fight for her captain. We've seen that in the past. So when she's calling out the team like this, it was a bit of a rough game. So going to hand out the home field dig deeper award of the game to Julie Sue. Ken, give our guys at home field a shout out, please.
Yeah, home field for your marketing and more, your needs for marketing and more. You can reach them at myhomefield.ca. Also, tell them Kenny and Renny sent you.
Yeah, might as well. Also, might as well get right into it because she brought up the lamplighter. Time for you all to start giving me your lamplighter of the game. All you have to do is tell us what your favorite goal of the game was, the best goal, the whatever. Or sometimes your lamplighter, as we've seen, people make quirky little moments out of it. Someone was calling Wheeler's giveaway earlier on tonight the lamplighter of the game. Ken, what was your lamplighter of the game?
Well, I mean, nice goal by Kyle Connor, but my lamplighter is the goal by Matt Boldy, the last goal, the sixth goal on the power play. But wasn't the goal. The goal was shot into an empty net, and we'll get into the coach's challenge immediately when we're done this, Sean, because I know you had an interesting theory that I'm pretty sure Rick Bowness subscribed to the theory or certainly appreciated it. But for me, it was the pass by Kirill Kaprizov. I mean, he did an unbelievable job of faking the play to open up the lane to Matt Boldy. And I mean, Rick Bowness believes that the stick of Boldy got caught up in the skate. Sorry, not Boldy. The guy in front that was being tackled by Neil Pionk got into the skate of Connor Hellebuyck, which prevented him from pushing across. But that pass by Kaprizov, just absolutely off the charts. And I'm not just picking it because I plan to write about Kirill Kaprizov at the top of my Weeb's World Sunday NHL Notes column this week coming up. But man, oh man, what an exceptional pass and good finish by Boldy, who had been struggling offensively. The goal by Boldy, his 7th of the year, is my lamplighter of the game.
Okay, lamplighter, and of course, we need people to know that if they want to sample some of TransCanada Brewing Company's Lamplighter Amber Ale, we got you covered. We got to give away an 8-pack every single episode of the show. All you have to do is tell us what your lamplighter of the game was, your favorite goal, your favorite moment, any of those kind of things. Tell us what your Lamplighter Ale was, or Lamplighter Amber Ale moment of the game was, and we will add you into the pot, pull a name out of that pot, and you can win this 8-pack of Lamplighter Amber Ale. And if you can't wait for us to give you some of that, head on down to TransCanada Brewing Company, go to their tap room at 11290 Kenniston, go check them out. They have just a wall of delicious beers all over the place. Again, Kenny, I want to get together with you and try with some of those sours because people were telling me those sours were phenomenal. But that's it. Give us your lamplighter of the game, and I'm happy to announce that Crystal Morgan won the lamplighter of the game last game. So Crystal, who usually direct messages both of us, but direct messages me to let me know that she wants what her lamplighter of the game was. She's been religious with this, so great on her.
Is that like putting in 2 entries, Sean? Is that like putting in 2 entries if she sends
I don't know.
Out to both of us?
I don't count it twice. I mostly ignore what you send my way, Ken. No, that's not
okay.
Anyone who's sending the Ken, keep sending the Ken. He sends them over to me. But Crystal has been downright religiously putting that in. So now you can religiously respond to me. I know you got my contact information. Send it my way. Send it with your full name, your real name, if Crystal Morgan isn't your real name, and send it along with your email, and I will send you a voucher for your frosty, delicious Lamplighter Amber Ale. And the last 2 winners, I know Stonewall Dave is one of them. The document that I have to share with you is on the computer at home. You haven't got yours yet because I'm down here. I'll get home tomorrow and I'll get those straight away to everybody. Great job. Ken?
Just for Stonewall Dave, yeah. And to the folks that were just crushing us for not knowing what COD was Call of Duty. Sean, I'm not sure about you. I know you're a couple years younger than I am, but the last time I was really a gamer was when I was playing with the Winkler Flyers and we were playing the NHL 94 on the Sega Genesis. So my first computer gaming console when I was growing up as a young teenager, maybe in Altona, was a ColecoVision. So hey, all of you young folks, why don't you look it up on the old interwebs and see what you can find. We certainly Not quite in the stages where we're playing a lot of Call of Duty, but we can appreciate that other people are.
Yeah. No, hey, I'm going to throw this out here. Lynn Reimer says, Kenny and Renny, please make sure you tell people how to get the tickets for your Christmas party. People were asking. Well, I bring it up because Stonewall Dave himself, when he contacted me and gave me his contact information for the beer, he also asked for tickets for he and his wife to the Kenny and Renny Christmas party on December 18th, starting at 6 o'clock, an hour before the game. We'll all get together and have a good time watching that. A game against the Seattle Kraken. The Jets will be in Seattle. Stonewall Dave has signed up. He's booked his tickets. You got to do the same. If you want to do it, you do it the same way as you get a hold of me for the Lamplighter. Direct message me on Twitter, or direct message Ken on Twitter or on Instagram. Or if you find a way to get a hold of our emails, send it to our email. Just get a hold of us. Let us know that you want to go, and we'll set tickets aside. Like I said, they've been moving fairly fast. Last I checked, we were in between a third to half of them sold. So they are starting to run out. So if you want to go, and we'd love to meet up with everyone there, we want to pack the house at this event, send us a direct message and we will make that happen. Ken, time to there we go, Chris. Yes, Crystal Morgan, that is your name. Of course it is. Ken, time for the Johnston Group Got You Covered play of the game. What you got?
Oh boy. The Got You Covered play of the game.
I've got one. I've got one.
Yeah,
and I think it's our next talking point. I think
perfect.
The Got You Covered.
Yeah, I know where you're going here. Yes.
You know exactly where I'm going.
I do, yes.
The Got You Covered play of the game for me is Rick Bowness challenging the goal that Connor Hellebuyck wanted challenged. Now, Rick Bowness tried to give an explanation of it afterwards. I'll give
the explanation when you're done. You go, and then I'll go after.
Anyway, in my opinion, I sent this to Ken right away afterwards. This is what he was talking about. I think that was a time where a frustrated goaltender who is in the middle of a game that, to your point, Ken, I don't think was his fault, was feeling frustrated and reached out in frustration and it was like, let's challenge this thing. I don't think it matters if that goal turns over. The game's over at that point. There's no risk to it, even if the Jets end up with another penalty kill coming out of that. And I think Rick Bowness was like, yep, he wants it, he gets it, and went and challenged that. Now he's going to get into the explanation. You can get into the explanation, Ken, on what he said. But I can tell you, I watched that, and I didn't think there was any way in HE double hockey sticks that call was going to get turned over. Jamal Mayers did say so on the broadcast as well. He didn't think that was going to be turned over. You can get into it. I'll give my opinion on why I don't think there should have been any consideration of that being turned over. But that is my Johnston Group Got You Covered moment of the game, was the head coach, Rick Bowness, finding a way to connect with his goaltender and show him he had his back and get some value and some relationship building out of a game that didn't have a lot else to talk about. Great stuff, I thought, by Rick Bowness. And, of course, the Johnston Group, We've Got You Covered play. We love this play. You won't find two businesses with the same challenges, but you will find 30,000 businesses with Chambers Plan employee benefits, proudly administered by our friends at Johnston Group. Chambers Plan is Canada's #1 plan for employee benefits because it evolves with the way you work and live. The plan is run as a not-for-profit designed specifically to support small businesses, and its unique pooling strategy keeps rates stable so you won't have any surprises at your next renewal. Chambers Plan now comes with professional consulting on key financial, legal, and HR issues, and teledoc telemedicine services are included with every health option. See how Chambers Plan can benefit your business by visiting chamberplan.ca. Ken, take it away with Rick's explanation of why he didn't think it was a goal.
Yeah, here's a direct quote. His stick was clearly in our goalie's skate. Clearly. Listen, there's going to be battles around the net. You're still responsible for your stick. In our eyes, and his stick clearly goes under Connor's stick. His stick and his skate, and knocks him down. This goaltender interference is a gray area. In parentheses, Sean, we know what Rick Bowness thinks of gray areas. He hates them. Yes, it really is. Yeah. But when we saw that and Connor kind of motioned to the bench, I'm going to support Connor. He made the right call. He looks at me and he thinks it's goaltender interference. I will go with him 100%.
There you go. So he's got his back is basically what he's saying out of that. Now I completely disagree with his assessment that like as that player you're still responsible with his stick. He basically gets bulldogged by Neil Pionk down on the ground.
Yeah.
I mean, that player's stick is on the ice because the player is on the ice. The player is on the ice because Neil Pionk mugs him in front of the net. And I don't think for a second it's the responsibility of the player getting mugged to make sure that he is putting his stick away from his body, away from the direction of the goaltender so that he can save the goaltender's space in that moment. To me, this was an open and shut case. I was surprised when they were challenging it at first, but I wasn't when I looked over and I saw you could read his lips. He said goaltender interference. And after he did that, he turned to Connor Hellebuck and he gave him a little head nod. Right? If you were watching the game, it's actually a really great example of great camera work brought by our crew down here on Wednesday Night Hockey. He gives him the head nod, and then it was touched on by T. Will right here. When it's all said and done, T. Will says the funny thing was when Bones looked over at Helly and shrugged when it was turned over. To me, the fact that I don't know how often a coach sits there and is like, yeah, we're going to challenge this, and turns to the goalie and is like, hey, bud, we're going to challenge this. We got you covered. And then when it doesn't happen, turns to his goalie and is like, well, we gave it a try. Like, to me, that had nothing to do with trying to overturn that goal and everything to do with a coach saying to his goaltender, I've got you covered. If you want us to do this, I'll go to war for you at this moment. We tried, bud. It didn't work, but don't worry. We'll move on from this. I think that after that play, the relationship between Connor Hellebuck and Rick Bowness got stronger. That's a savvy bit of coaching, if you ask me.
Yeah, and let's stay on Hellebuck for a second because I want to talk to you and our listeners about the pulling him versus not pulling him in a blowout kind of game. I actually wondered when they were having the delay, to be honest, Sean, I wondered if they were thinking about putting Riddick in after the fifth goal as kind of a mercy pull, let Connor take a breather, and then have him ready to start on Friday night against the Dallas Stars, and team that's in first place in the Central Division. Instead, it was for the challenge, which again I'm totally with you. Joel Eriksson-Ek, by the way, was the player in front with Neil Pionk, whose stick got caught a little bit. So anyways, I'm more curious for your thoughts. Here's what Rick Bowness said when he was asked, how do you balance things with Hellebuck between pulling him and letting him eat it for 6 goals against? Rick says, and I quote, he's a competitive guy. Listen, they want to finish the game. He's a competitive guy. I love the guy and I love his compete. He wasn't at fault. It's not like, okay, the goalie is having a bad night. That wasn't the case at all, so let him finish the game. I love the guy and I let him compete. Again, I understand where Rick is coming from. And Sean, I wonder too, if David Riddick hadn't started the game on Monday against the Carolina Hurricanes, then maybe you give the guy a break. You took the head thing down.
I was just trying to tell In Bones We Trust. Go to my my Twitter account. Send me a message if you want to go to the live showing. Go to my Twitter account. Leave me a message. Go on, Ken.
Yeah, sorry. I mean, it's interesting. I mean, if Riddick hadn't played on Monday against Carolina, then maybe you think about giving him the mercy pull and having him fresh. But to me, I like the fact that he left him in. Because, Sean, what else do we know about Connor Hellebuck? He doesn't like getting pulled. Yeah. Right? So, Again, I think this is great assessment by Rick Bowness. Because for us, we're looking here and thinking, man, this game could get to 7, 8 goals. You're thinking you don't want Hellebuck to have to wear that. Here you are, Sean. You've got a guy in the middle of the Vezina discussion having an unbelievable season, and now all of a sudden when the team kind of stinks in front of him, now all of a sudden he's got to eat it and allow 5, 6 or more goals until things kind of stabilized for them. So I can understand. I mean, I think I actually appreciate Rick Bowness's answer to that question just as much as I appreciate his answer to the challenging the goal for goalie interference. So, anyways, this was one of those nights where if you're Connor Hellebuck, you got it's not a full Plinko, but you have an early Plinko goal, right? He makes the save, it goes off Josh Morrissey, and man, oh man, Sean, I don't know what you thought in real time, but in the press box, we're like, whoa, how does Mason Shaw score on a wrist shot from essentially at the boards at the hash marks? But you see it goes off Hellebuck, then bounces off the defenseman. So it wasn't as bad a goal as it looked like in real time. Now, however, I mean, and the other one was tough luck, the one that goes up in the air. But man, there just were a couple of, the Jets' coverage wasn't very good. The Foligno, rebound, tap in. You got to have your head on a swivel there if you're the defenseman. I mean, that's a guy. Foligno can't be wide open. I mean, yes, was it a juicy rebound? Sure, but you got to have some guys in coverage. Again, I know some folks were talking earlier. Blake Wheeler, bouncing puck, turnover in his own end, 2-on-0. Great pass by Eriksson Ek, but that's just a bad goal all around. Again, things happen, but man, I mean, I didn't think Hellebuck was at fault at all. I would have understood if Rick Bowness had pulled him for his benefit, but I also appreciate the fact that he wanted to leave him in there because he likes to be competitive, and Hellebuck thinks probably they could still rally when he's in the net. He's probably going to slam the door. So I think it was a smart play by him to leave him in, even though in real time I was kind of wondering if it might be a good idea to give him a break.
I think this is an interesting comment by Beer League, who says Bones should have benched Telly not because of his play, but rather to send a message to the boys. Psychologically, I would feel terrible as a player if my all-star goalie got pulled. That's an interesting one. Nate Schmidt kind of talked a little bit about that after the game, about how he agreed that they left Connor Hellebuck out to dry. Sorry, it was Kyle Connor who said afterwards, Connor Hellebuck's one of the best players in the league, and he's going to come back from this and be one of the best players in the league. So I think they felt that way.
Nate said that too, though. Nate did also say that they left him out to dry.
Yeah, I thought both of them were into it. I thought Kyle Connor kind of hammered it home a little bit more directly. But I mean, the one thing I would say about that the potential for doing something like this to kind of affect your players is I still think you have the ability to affect the goaltender psychologically. And why do that when your players probably don't need to learn this lesson? The players probably know when they hung a guy out to dry, and they don't need to be shamed for it at the risk of upsetting your goaltender. I do think, Ken, this is a really interesting situation. Before I get into it, I want you to give our main man Lou a shout out.
Sure. For all the folks in our chat and listening that are looking for or have any needs when it comes to real estate, if you're buying, if you're selling, if you're curious about where things stand with the market, contact our guy Lou Furlan of Royal LePage Dynamic Real Estate Realty. You can reach him 204-791-9971 or at the office line 204-989-5000. And Sean, we got to get that email address added to the bottom.
Yeah, you
there.
bet. We'll get there.
That's our next. I think it's Lou at loufurlan.ca, but I'm going to double check that right now.
Well, I'll tell you this. I'm a little jealous of our main man, Lou Furlan, because he's looking sharp in this picture. I love the print on that jacket. And how crisp does that white shirt look? Lou's out here looking better than I am on my own show. I don't know what his deal is, but I'll tell you this. I know he looks that good because he goes to Vittorio Rossi and Frank and the boys. So, and then I want to also give one last shout out to our friends at Cambrian Credit Union. You and I are both members there, so we've seen their new website, Ken, and their new online banking experience. We've also benefited from their unfee banking account, and that's one of the things we love about banking with Cambrian is banking for free with unfee, saving $220 per year. We simply set up a recurring direct deposit every month to our Cambrian checking or savings accounts, and that's how we qualify. No minimum balance required. Great to have Cambrian on board. Okay, let's get to this. I kind of forgot what I was talking about. What are we talking about here? Oh, no.
We had Hellebuck. We just finished.
It's still
up.
Hellebuck. Did we finish up Hellebuck?
I think we're finished. You said psychologically, and this is the other thing to Beer League's comment. I think it's more important to make sure you're not upsetting the Vezina goalie than lighting a fire for your team to kind of respond. I'm with you 100%. That I think the players already realized they had left their all-star goalie out to dry. They didn't need a reminder. So
yeah, well. So this is one thing I think is interesting. Connor Hellebuck's a different kind of goaltender. I've been wondering about the way. So last game when David Riddick started, I stand by my comments, and I still do think that was a way of Rick Bowness saying essentially, look, the right thing to do in this situation is get the backup goaltender in, right? It's not about when Connor Hellebuck wants to go or when I can sneak this in for the guy. It's about we need to keep our backup goaltender engaged. So we're going tonight against a really good team. That's just how it goes. I love the confidence. It paid off for them. And I think the Jets, once again, this is a coaching decision made by Rick Bowness. I think they're better off for it. But I do think, too, that when you've got an all-star goaltender, a Vezina caliber goaltender like you do in Connor Hellebuyck, you have to kind of have a conversation with them. Now, I personally think, Ken, that during the Paul Maurice era, that Paul Maurice was ruled a little bit too much by the conversations with Connor Hellebuyck. Yes, Connor Hellebuyck wants to play every single game. We've heard him say that before, but that doesn't mean you just hand the games over to them. You and I had plenty of conversations on this podcast last year that we wanted to see more of Eric Comrie. I think that was a mistake last year. It was a mistake they didn't play Eric Comrie more often. And I think that mistake is born out of the idea that you're riding one goaltender and that goaltender always wants to play. And then you start worrying as a coach that if you lose a game, it's going to stand out because Connor Hellebuyck wanted to play and he said he was ready to play and you didn't play him. And then you're worried that your team is thinking, well, we could have won that night if you just would have put in Connor the way that Connor wanted to play. And I think that was kind of the struggle that past coaching staffs have had with Connor Hellebuyck. And I think Rick Bowness just tunes out that noise. To your point, Rick Bowness is black and white. He thinks there's a right decision and a wrong decision. And he's made it clear the right decision is the decision to make sure that your backup goaltender is engaged. However, I do think he's had conversations with Connor Hellebuyck and knows the kind of goaltender he is. Ken, I don't think that even if David Riddick hadn't played the last game, I don't think he would have pulled Connor Hellebuyck in this situation because I think what he saw is a goaltender that is not going to feel shell-shocked, right? Like, that's why you pull a goaltender, is either A, a goaltender doesn't want to play anymore, a la go back to Patrick Waugh being hung out to dry in his last game as a Montreal Canadian and felt embarrassed by being hung out to dry and wanted the coaches to pull him out of that game earlier. Well, that's one thing you don't have to worry about as a coach with Connor Hellebuyck is he doesn't want to be pulled out. He could be losing 15-1. Connor Hellebuyck does not want to come out of that game. And two, I don't think as a coach, Connor Hellebuyck is the kind of player who gets shaken. So I don't think him getting lit up like Ken, for a second, do you think that Connor Hellebuyck is going to be poor in his next start because his confidence was shattered in this game? No. So those aren't considerations for a coach. So I think this is one thing where he may handle it a little bit differently, but he handles it differently because he's had conversations with Connor Hellebuyck. He knows the player, knows he's not fragile, knows he doesn't feel miffed or like he's been embarrassed by his coach and staying in games like that. So I think this is the way it should be, unless you think your team has a chance to come back and win in that game, that you don't pull your goaltender out unless you think it's going to turn the tide of the game. And I do think that based on the Jets' last 10 minutes of the second period, the game being 3-1, when they came out in the fourth period and scored that quick goal, I just think it was one of those games where it didn't line up that you could pull the goaltender, put in David Riddick, hoping that it was going to be a boost. It happened strangely, but I don't think there's anything wrong with this decision. But I also think Rick Bowness handles Connor Hellebuyck differently, and in this case, the same way Paul Maurice would have handled him, because Connor Hellebuyck's a different goaltender.
Yeah, I mean, let's not get this confused, though. I mean, Rick Bowness is not afraid to ride his number one goaltender. I mean, he's done it during the course of his career at all, and he will still ride Connor Hellebuyck. He just doesn't need to play 65 to 68 games. I still expect Hellebuyck to play 60 plus, but he doesn't need to play 67. I mean, that's just the way that it is here. So, again, Connor Hellebuyck really has. Again, I wouldn't even consider this an off night for him outside of the numbers. It's unfortunate for his numbers, because he's put together such a great start to the year. But like, this is it's a day where things just didn't line up. I don't think this is there weren't a lot of bad goals scored on Hellebuyck here. And I expect him to be incredibly sharp against the Stars on Friday.
I'm going to answer this one quickly. 80s TV Kid said, "Why?" TV Kid says, "Why does the coach have to take a penalty then just to appease Hellebuyck?" The penalty doesn't matter at that point. What's more important is building trust with your goaltender. The game's over, and so if taking a penalty in that case brings you closer with your goaltender and helps you build trust, then that's why you take that penalty. Quick question as well. In Bones We Trust says, will Heinola ever score like Makar? No. Moving on to the next topic.
Let's stay on him for a little while.
Let's make it Heinola. Let's go to Heinola. What did you think of his game tonight?
Oh, I think you could start. I mean, for me, nondescript game again for Heinola. 22 shifts for 13-18. He was on for 2 against. I didn't see a whole lot of his strengths being on display, to be quite frank.
Nope.
again, there were a couple nice plays, but overall, he was a non-factor. And when you're fighting to be in the NHL, there can't be many nights when you're a non-factor. I understand. I mean, hey, could the Jets have rolled out Ville Heinola on a late power play in the third when they're down a bunch of goals? Sure, but I was talking about this with Scott Billick up top. Ville Heinola did nothing to deserve being on the power play tonight, so you're not going to give him a cookie on a night where he has done not a whole lot. And again, I'm not blaming Heinola. I know these are tough circumstances, and he played against another tough team. But if you want to be an NHL regular, you've got to play to your strengths. Show the things that you can do well. He played a little bit more than he did last game. We talked about it with Rick Bowness this morning. He knew the circumstances were tough. He didn't expect Ville Heinola to play like an all-star. But now when you start stacking a few games, now you got to see how he's going to respond. I mean, we talked with Rick about Dylan DeMello. He could be back as early as Friday or Sunday. So if you were Ville Heinola, you needed a pop today, Sean. You needed a big effort from Ville Heinola, and you got kind of a nondescript one, is what I thought.
Sorry, I'm just going to go back. I probably shouldn't get sucked into arguing or responding with the chat room, but 80s TV Kids says it sets a bad precedent, though. Bones doesn't need to be friends with the players. He's not trying to be friends with the players. He's just trying to create trust between a coach and a player. And I don't see how this creates a bad precedent. I don't understand the comment. There's no bad precedent here. That penalty is entirely pointless. It's meaningless in that game, so I don't see how it sets a bad precedent. I'm going to go to a couple comments here about people talking about Ville Heinola. Liquor Beaver says, you may be right. I think you give Ville Heinola 10 straight games with the same D partner and assess at that point. John Chan says, play Heinola for 10 to 12 straight games to see what we have in him before deciding on his future with this team. My beef with these two comments is you basically are saying you need to shape and build this team around the idea of figuring out Ville Heinola. This is a team that is in a battle with two really good teams for the Central Division lead right now, and you're going to start making decisions based on what's best for Ville Heinola at this moment? That doesn't make sense. I'm going to back it up, and I'm going to tell you what I saw from Ville Heinola. I saw him, there was one shift where he gave the puck away once. The play came around, he got it again, and he just, without looking through it, straight up the boards, right to another Wild player, and then the puck got thrown straight back down to him, luckily, and I thought, okay, well, that didn't cost him, because the player that he threw it to just made the same mistake, and then he gave it away again, and then I noticed there was a shift where the Jets had a really, really good, it was during that 10-minute stretch where they were absolutely on fire, and they had it in the zone, and at that point, it's important to protect the puck, to hold on to the puck, and Ville Heinola got the puck and made a very laissez-faire, casual play and turned over the puck and entirely took the pressure off the Minnesota Wild in the process. And again, and there's going to be people upset with me saying this, these are the same problems that we've seen from, this is what got Ville Heinola sent down the first time around. Now, I know people see in Ville Heinola something special. You wouldn't be asking if he's going to score like Cale Makar if you didn't think he had special offensive upside. I agree, and I think he's got great offensive upside. What he's being asked time and time again, though, is to correct these plays that he continuously makes. And to me, he's either not getting the message or he simply hasn't figured out how to protect the puck or that you just can't be making no-look plays in tight situations, because I got a direct message during the game from a Kenny and Renny watcher. I'm not going to bring up the name, but they said, I'm noticing Ville Heinola right now. And Ville Heinola is one of those guys that you can get a message from a fan and it could mean one of two things, Ken. It could mean them looking and seeing Ville Heinola as the best player on the ice tonight, or it could be someone saying Ville Heinola is the worst player on the ice tonight, because that's the kind of passion that this guy elicits, is people just go the other way, and I think a lot of times people see what they want to see. I'll say this right now. Maybe I'm seeing what I want to see. I don't know why I would want to see anything. I think what I'm doing is giving my very honest opinion of what I see from him. But that person said, I said, well, what are you seeing? And they said, I'm seeing him give away the puck a lot tonight. And I said, well, yeah, that's what I'm seeing as well. A game like that was a tough game. And believe me, Ken, we talked about this last game. I thought he played really, really well
Yeah.
against the Carolina Hurricanes, a team that pressures well. And so he has the capability to do it. But what's the hardest thing for a young player to achieve in the NHL, Ken?
Do it consistently.
Consistency. That's exactly what it was. And so tonight, what I saw from Ville Heinola is that he wasn't able to repeat the performance he had in the last game. His consistency isn't there. And I do believe we've seen far more consistency from a player like Dylan Samberg up to this point. That would mean if everything happens and everyone gets even, I would see Dylan Samberg being in the lineup before Ville Heinola at any point, which typically means you're not going to have him be the seventh defenseman, which means you're going to see him down with the Manitoba Moose. That's where I see the situation going.
Yeah, and just a quick one too. I just want to augment what you were saying. I mean, it it's not a trial by fire. So the Jets are trying to win. I mean, I understand if the Jets want to do that last year at the end of the year, fine.
Sorry, yours truly says consistency. It's been 2 games. Yeah, 2 games, and he's had a stinker. Like he's had that. What are you talking about? Like it's not. It's the job of a player who's trying to come up and steal an NHL job to show that he's better than everyone else. Not his job to come up and lay an egg or have a poor game every once in a while and have the team ignore it, hoping that this is the way. This is how you get to the NHL. You get up and you don't give them an excuse to go down. So consistency, this isn't a sample size thing. You don't have room for error when you're trying to steal someone's job and make the NHL, especially if they're making less errors than you. So consistency, this does not even apply to this situation. Sorry, Ken, go on.
No, it's okay. And if we want to, let's talk about consistency quickly. Who did we notice tonight, Sean? Mikey Eyssimont. What did Mikey Eyssimont do in his last game? He scored his first NHL goal. What did he do today? He was all over the ice, all around the net, making plays, making smart plays, getting in on the forecheck. You know what Mikey Eyssimont is trying to do? He's trying to earn an NHL job. He's trying to be the next version of Matthew Perreault at the end of his career. I mean, I understand that he's not Matthew Perreault, but he brings some of the same qualities. He's a dogged forechecker. He has some skill. I mean, Sean, would it surprise you at some point if Mikey Eyssimont forces his way onto the second power play, if he becomes that net front presence, like what Matthew Perreault would? Everyone's like, oh, Matthew Perreault's not a big guy. You know what Matthew Perreault did well? Screen the opposition goalie. He got good at it. So to me, Eyssimont is exactly what Ville Heinola is supposed to be trying to do. He's stacking up consistent efforts because he's trying to force Rick Bowness to leave him no choice but to leave him in the lineup. So, again, let's see what happens here going forward. But, man, I mean, come on, people. I mean, giving a guy 10 to 12 games in the middle of, like, you're getting close to the quarter point of the season. I mean, this is not I just don't understand. I think the Jets should have played Heinola more at the end of last year when they were out of it. Absolutely. It might have been helpful. Because then maybe he's feeling more confident going into this year. And no one is saying that Ville can't do it or won't do it. He just doesn't necessarily need to do it immediately. Because right now, when everyone's healthy, he's probably not in the top 6. I mean, that's just the way it's been so far. He can change that at some point. And Sean, I love the fact that Rick Bowness put him out for the 4-on-4 situation. That's where he should shine, when there's more ice and he has the ability to get the puck into skilled players' hands. But, I mean, everyone's saying, well, just put Ville on the number 1 power play because it's struggling. I mean, you have to give him a reason to put you on the power play. Does he have the skill to run the top unit? I think in time he will, for sure. But right now, Josh Morrissey's been one of the Jets' best players. What are you saying to Josh Morrissey if you're giving Ville Heinola the keys to the car on the number 1 power play instead of the guy who's leading your team in scoring?
Leading the team in
what
scoring.
Message are you sending in that situation? I can tell you what it isn't going to be sending: the right message to either Josh or his teammates.
Well, and responds exactly the way you've asked him to, right? Like, that's the thing that is really special about what Josh Morrissey's doing right now is his head coach essentially challenged him and asked him to do a certain amount of things. And it was touched on in the broadcast tonight. Not only has Josh Morrissey responded to that challenge and become like an offensive player to the degree we've never seen from him before, but he's given up nothing on defense in the process. So to your point, talk about the definition of insanity, trying to take away opportunities from Josh Morrissey, who's done every single thing to deserve every opportunity. For what? For what reason? It's crazy to me.
One quick one. I mean, if they want to incorporate him into that special teams element, put him on the second unit. It's fine. I mean, we've talked about this a lot, and I still don't have the answers. I asked Jamal quickly about it in the intermission. Neil Pionk, there's something off with Neil's game, and maybe if you're going to put him on for somebody, you give Neil Pionk a break from running the second power play. You can try Hanel at the top of that unit, but you're not putting Hanel on the top unit. And again, we're not even sure if he's going to be in the lineup on Friday. We'll see what happens. I mean, this is not necessarily the last the Jets will see of Hanel, but man, he needs to elevate. And Doug, I didn't say he was shining on the 4-on-4. It was a very brief time. I'm just talking about putting a player in a position to succeed. Villy will be confident in those situations, and over time, he will be a player that can be effective there, Doug. But
Kenny is responding to Doug Turowski, who says Kenny Hanel did not shine in the 4-on-4. Okay, we got to move on from that. We've talked a lot about that, and we'll get into it more. Let's do. Okay, is it worth talking about the spark that the Jets got from flip-flopping Mark Scheifele and Pierre-Luc Dubois? Like at one point, I thought that was going to be the story of the game. And it was, or it looked like it was going to be, and then the Jets just didn't come out with anything in the third period. But what did you see, Ken, the spark that was created by putting Pierre-Luc Dubois back with Kyle Connor? And the one thing I thought was maybe a little bit interesting was the flip-flopping and putting Scheifele with Wheeler. We've all been there before. We've seen that before. But leaving Cole Perfetti with Wheeler and Scheifele rather than reuniting him with Pierre-Luc Dubois and Kyle Connor.
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, you and I had talked about this, I think, last week. I would actually like to see Perfetti with Connor and Dubois at some point here and at some point soon, to be quite frank. What I saw Dubois. I saw the chemistry in Dubois and Connor that we saw last season. We didn't see it the last time they went to this combination platter. Because they hadn't been used together during that portion of the season, at least not very often, and then not outside of the power play. I like Dubois and Connor together as a combo, and I think the Perfetti, he had a great, glorious chance. Yes, the penalty that he took, he was back checking. So again, I don't blame him for the slashing penalty. Player was in the slot trying to take away a scoring chance. No issue with that. I actually think that Cole Perfetti could really benefit from playing with Kyle Connor and Pierre-Luc Dubois. Again, he's played a bunch with Dubois already this year. But again, now you've got Scheifele, Wheeler, and then maybe you have Sam Gagner on his off wing, or you have somebody else. I mean, it's interesting. Yeah, Larry, right on. Larry's been trying to beat me the whole game. Larry, how positive have I been? He was saying that I would try to find some positive spin on this game. How am I doing on that front so far today?
You have to for the podcast people read the comment if you're going to respond to it.
Sorry,
Larry. I'm just laughing at it. You know what, Ken? I take a lot of heat on this, so you can't be losing your mind the one time.
I'm not losing my mind. I'm laughing, buddy. I'm laughing.
Come on here. I was getting a good laugh out of this. This is a good burn. Larry TSG just totally blew up Ken's concentration by saying, sometimes I wonder if Kenny was watching the same game I was. I think Sean thinks that sometimes too. I like that. Take a bite out of Kenny. I need a break over here. I've got the minnows nibbling at my toes the entire show, or the piranhas not nibbling at my toes. So it's good that you get it sometimes. Sorry. Continue on, Ken.
No, and it's okay, and it's totally fine. I got no problem. I got broad shoulders. I don't mind. I can take the heat. I can take the beaking. I can take the shots. But occasionally I'll stand up for myself.
This is a good question from Craig Zamzow, who we saw down at Vittorio Rossi. He was getting taken care of by Frankie and the boys. Craig Zamzow, let's do our takes on Perfetti at the quarter pole. Is he a top 6 player on a playoff team in 2023? Ken, start? Or do you want me to start?
I'll start. I mean,
okay.
He is currently one of the better options the Jets have to be a top 6 player on a playoff team. Is there room for improvement? Absolutely, 100%. We've talked about this a lot. Cole is an incredibly smart player. There are times when the pace is not in his game, or not at a pace where maybe where it needs to be when it comes to being a top 6 player, playing against some of the fastest teams in the National Hockey League. But, I mean, the Jets don't have a better option right now, Craig. I mean, I don't see one, and they've tried a couple of guys already up in the top six.
What he's asking,
I know what he's saying, I know exactly what he's asking.
Okay, all right.
Is he a top 6 player on a team that can win the Stanley Cup? I don't know, but this is the thing. I didn't expect to know in the first quarter of the season, so it's a fair and valid question. I just think it is way too early to make the declaration that he's not going to be that. I think he has done a nice job. But Sean, this goes back to our original conversation when you had Cole, competing for the Calder Trophy and being a 50 to 60 point player potentially.
Yeah.
This is why I was saying the reminder about Mark Scheifele being a 34 point player. And 34 points for a 20-year-old player are good. Those are fine numbers. But I mean, the Jets, would they like more? Of course they would. Cole's the kind of guy who's going to get better as the year goes on. Let's not forget, Cole Perfetti didn't skate for almost 2 months in the summertime when he was going through his back issues after coming back from the shoulder. I mean, for a guy who needed to add pace and speed to his game, you basically took him off the ice for 2 months. Like, it's pretty hard to gain speed when you're not able to train or be on the ice. And again, I'm not blaming Cole whatsoever. Cole wants to become a better skater. He's working at it. He's working at all aspects of his game. He's improving in many of them. But it's a hard job to ask a 20-year-old who is undersized to be a dominant top 6 player. But right now, he's one of the best options the Jets have, and I expect Cole to continue to improve as the season goes on. And you know what, Sean? It's hard to improve as the season goes on because the games get harder, and so does the competition.
So I'll take a look at this. I mean, if you're taking a look around the league, it is not exactly the most, overwhelming rookie race. Cole Perfetti is 2 points.
He's right in the middle of it.
Going into this, he was 2 points off of Matty Beniers. There were 2 players with 11 points. I don't know what happened tonight, so maybe those numbers changed. But to give you some perspective, Brandon Manitoba's Kalen Addison is also at 9 points after he scored tonight. So
and had an assist.
Had an assist, so he's up to 10. So Kalen Addison is ahead of Cole Perfetti in the point production right now. Now, I'm not saying it's all about point production, and I can tell you this: had he had that kind of game, we were. It's funny, we talked about it on the podcast 2 games ago, but that shift that he had in Pittsburgh, where he broke up the Malkin scoring chance, and then went and broke up another play in the slot, and then went down the ice and set up a scoring chance. I asked Rick Bowness about it. Rick Bowness had said, well, the Malkin thing is just great hustle, him breaking up the Malkin play, but the next play that he breaks up in the slot is exactly where they're asking guys to be. So to him, that tells him this is a young guy who he said would not have made that decision in training camp and made it during the regular season. So his point is Cole Perfetti is getting better. He's learning. He's becoming a more defensive player that's not costing you as much. Tonight, he had that opportunity. Jamal Mayers said he thought he should have one-timed it, got it off a little bit quicker. I mean, when it comes to scoring chances like that, it's a, in the moment thing. I think it's easy afterwards to say, well, he should have done this, because you could see on the video replay what the player should have done. Well, he should have shot it higher. He should have gone top corner, whatever else. In that moment, I don't think you can blame that player.
It's a reminder of how good the NHL goalies are, Sean.
Well,
I mean,
exactly.
At the American League level or the junior level, that goal, that's in. I mean, Gustafsson makes a Hail Mary save.
Sorry, I'm getting some. Never mind.
It's not funny. I mean,
it's a little funny.
Larry, turn the channel if you're not liking what you're hearing.
No. Let's not go down that road. Larry's expressing his opinion. I want to get back though to Cole Perfetti. Hockey's hard.
Larry needs to wake up. He's saying that what I'm saying is BS. I've been being honest this whole show, man.
Okay. Sorry. Let me close this out so we can close out the show. Cole Perfetti. So to me, at the quarter point right now, I'll say the same thing as I said last year when he was on that line with Pierre-Luc Dubois and Kyle Connor. I mean, I didn't think he overwhelmed. right? That was a really good opportunity that he had. One of the reasons that why I picked him to win the Calder Trophy this year is because he's got a phenomenal opportunity. He's on a line with Pierre-Luc Dubois, who is second on this team in scoring. He can learn stuff from a player who has done a lot of amazing things in the league, like Blake Wheeler. But I'm still at the point where I'm not overwhelmed by him. Now, it's not an overwhelming year, again, I'll say, with the rookie crop. He's only 2 off the point lead, unless that changed here tonight. But I mean, this is where the league is right now. This is what the rookies in the league are looking at right now. And I think if you're looking at the rookies in the league, you should be happy what you're seeing from Cole Perfetti. But I'll say this, as he stands right now, without learning more, Craig Zamzow, if you're asking the question, is he a top 6 player on a Stanley Cup team? I don't necessarily think that's the case.
He said playoff team.
Back to a playoff
so
team, or did he say Stanley Cup
playoff team? I said
okay.
Stanley Cup team. He said playoff team.
Well, okay, so I think he can be on a playoff team, but this goes back to what I keep landing on. And I like to admit when I've been wrong, and I'm not saying that I'm wrong yet, but I will say this, Ken, you had an idea the other show that I didn't agree with. I'm starting to come back around a little bit more, especially based on what we've seen from the Jets lately. Maybe it's because I'm starting to see some cracks in the armor. We'll see what happens with that. But the idea of going out and getting help now is an idea that has more merit than I originally thought. I had thought of the Winnipeg Jets and the response that they've gotten from their bottom 6, and to your point, the 4th line being their best line on this night. I had thought that you keep giving those guys an opportunity until you stop seeing the results. Well, that's when you would that's when you would go out and make a move. I like the idea of the Jets trying to save as much of their cap space as they can and going like big time fishing, big game fishing at the trade deadline, because I do think based on what this team's window is and the potential to lose players in the coming years, this could be, especially if they keep playing and staying where they are in the standings, this could be the Jets' last big shot. And I've said this in the past. I do believe, and that's a conversation we have to have another time, Ken, because I talked to some of the players in the room and got some interesting stuff on Coach Bowness. But I do believe Rick Bowness is the kind of coach that makes, we had this conversation with Jamal the other day. We'll have to get into it on the next show. But I think he's the kind of coach who's able to give you a good shot at winning a series and out-coach another coach. So I want to see what this Jets team does with that, but they need to have all the tools. So I'm softening on your stance. I still like the idea of the Jets holding as much cap space as they can and going absolutely nuts at the trade deadline. Big swings, bigger swings than we've ever seen from them before. But I'll say this. The last 5 games, I talked about it. We're starting to see cracks in the armor. If it keeps going in that direction, we start seeing the Jets fall. I'll admit that if they're not getting the results, maybe now is the time for them to start making some moves to try and see what they can shore up. Ken, do you have anything to say before we go?
Don't wait until it's too late, just like I said the first time.
There you go. Good stuff. I wanted to say thanks to the chat room who they took some swipes. They took some swipes tonight. That's how it goes. That's the Kenny and Renny chat room. I want to say thank you to our sponsors who we've said this once. I'll say it every single time. If you enjoy the conversations happening in this space, please appreciate our sponsors and support our sponsors who are supporting and keeping this conversation in this space. That would be Vittorio Rossi, Trans-Canada Brewing, the Johnston Group, Lou Ferlin, Homefield, and Cambrian Credit Union. Ken, you are moving on to Dallas. I'm heading home after this, where I will hand out those 8 packs of Frosty Delicious Lamplighter Amber Ale. Safe travels for you, my friend. I wish myself the same. And thank you so much, chat room, for joining us. We will talk to you again on Friday.